is 2:04, and it looks like the people joining has kind of stabilized. So with that, first announcement is we will be ending at 3:15 sharp today, or a little bit early. We're not going to have as much water cooler time at the end of this due to the MSL meeting that's coming up at 3:30. So with that, Bob Cochran from Montana State Library has an announcement. So if you want to go ahead with your announcement, Bob.
Yeah, it was just that there is that training at 3:30 this afternoon. And it's a pretty much an introduction to the next gen 911 GIS validation and aggregation portal. Sort of a place to upload your data and get some feedback on what you need to do to get it to next gen 911 compliance. And hopefully it'll be a pretty much there was a link mailed out to that to PSAP managers, and the GIS people that are identified as direct PSAP support all got an invitation to that. But at the same time, there's no harm in other people that work on addressing cities and count lower levels understanding what the state plan for their localities. And I'd be happy to send that to you, Jenny, if you like it.
I'm gonna copy.
But yeah,
that, please.
All right. And the other question that was asked a little bit before the meeting of it, will it be recorded? And yes, it will be recorded. And it'll probably be a private listing of the recording, but not password protected. So we'll definitely send that out to people that would like to watch that training as well. And once again, I guess talked a little bit before the meeting, but that training is going to be given by a one spatial trainer. And that's a company that the state library is partnered with to deliver this next gen 911 product and sort of implement the plan that they have going in a number of states right now with a little bit of a Montana twist to it.
Great, thank you for that announcement, Bob. And today we'll be covering public safety, and Gail's going to lead the presentation today. And if I'm still looking for somebody to lead the public safety discussion for next month, so if you guys want to keep that in mind. But with that, go ahead, Gail.
Hi, can I share my screen?
Yes.
Perfect. Okay. And can you see my screen?
I see a PowerPoint, GIS, and Esri solutions for police.
Perfect. Okay. So interesting to be able to talk about police. This presentation was actually created for a discussion that we had with our chief of police, deputy chief of police, and their new communications person. And we've been partnering with Esri and have a quotation for supporting Esri Solutions Police for our police department. But I think it's really important to understand where we're starting so that we understand where we're going to go. So this PowerPoint presentation has some things that I think are relevant to what we're talking about. And I think because this is a more technical audience, I might dig in a little bit further. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. All right, so we have some solutions for police already in place. The first thing that I will show you, I'm going to pull some stuff. I'm going to be pulling things on and off the screen, so kind of bear with me if you don't mind. So this dashboard already exists on our police webpage, and the chief of police has wanted to expand our transparency to the public, and that's how the conversation about solutions for police started. And this actually started, this dashboard was put together before I actually came to the organization. And it's a great way to be able to show the public what's happening in your community. It's a dashboard. There's nothing else associated with it on the back end. And actually, I'm going to close that page and bring over another page. Let's go here. So we'll actually come back to this page. So if you were to go to Bozeman's city webpage and go to departments and go to police, it would take you to this page. And I'm going to scroll down just a little bit. You can see that it's a little boring and not particularly well laid out, but there is some interesting information in here. This new calls for service dashboard is the dashboard that I just showed you. Body worn cameras are brand new, and they're actually really pushing this right now because it's just a new initiative that they've done. If you go into this, I think it's this one right here. Nope. So we have this online reporting form, and we have a couple of forms that we have that we're looking at potentially making survey 1, 2, 3 forms. But anyway, this is the police site as it lives now. And we do have that calls, the Bozeman Police Department calls and call logs, and it's public facing. We also had another, I think this was a dashboard, Police Beats, but that actually has been deleted. So that's what we have existing in our ArcGIS online environment. And then we also have our Bozeman portal, where we have shift maps that are created daily, density maps for looking at patterns in crime, and then another, and we'll get into this a little bit more, accident and citation reports, which is actually for our transportation engineer. So, and we'll take a look at that in a minute. Next page. Okay. So this page, when I did the presentation for police, was just one that was an acknowledgement that we've already done work. But I think that the people in this room will understand that the data management, the named user security, the analytics behind it, and the groups for collaboration, that's where it all starts. So we can't do what we do for police without having data management. I'm going to show you a little bit about what we do, how we pull data from Zerker. You've already seen some of the analytics in the dashboard. We actually have named user security on the group that we have for police. And then we, again, have a group for collaboration. And this is how the police shares their beat maps and those maps that get created on a daily basis. So let me just show you on the back end what it takes for us to create. Let's go here. So in the beginning, there was Zerker, and all of the data lived in Zerker, and GIS didn't have access to it. So there is a script. It's actually a report that is run that pulls data from Zerker on a nightly basis. It's actually early in the morning, 5:45 if you want to know. And every day it creates, and I think it's this one here, this Excel spreadsheet. It's actually a CSV file. This CSV file is ported over, I don't bring it up, sorry, just a second here. Here it is. It's ported over to our enterprise geodatabase, and you can see that we have a couple of them going on here. But this police incidents public, this is actually the feature class that's created from Zerker to the CSV file to our enterprise geodatabase, pushed back up into the dashboard to create that public facing dashboard that you're seeing. So that's already That's already established. We've had that in the works for about a year and a half, 2 years now. But being able to leverage that environment that already has reports and permissions and scripting helps us to be able to use that data in additional ways. So one of the things that we found when talking to police is that they don't really know what a hub site is. And I will tell you that I wish I had spent more time on this page when I spoke with them, because going back and speaking with them again, I realized that they have a really difficult time understanding what's embedded as a map or an app or content that's coming from different pages. And I'll show you some of that as we move forward. So this summer, I was very, very grateful to be able to attend the 2022 UC. And during that time, I actually attended this ArcGIS Solutions for Police and Fire. If you're interested at all in looking at solutions for police, I really recommend this video. I would skip right to 24 minutes if you're interested at all just in police. But the very beginning of it talks about what solutions are and how they're implemented. And yeah, so anyway, this is a great place if you're just interested in learning about what solutions for police are. So we actually are partnering with Esri, and Esri wrote us a proposal, and it gave us the scope of services, and these are the activities that are included in that scope of services document. So the very first part of that includes actually creating the Police Transparency Hub. We'll see a little bit more of what that means. And then putting together these 4 primary components of what solutions for police look like. And I'll show you some examples of what I found and how I found them. So community engagement, workforce diversity, crime stats, and use of force configuration. So I will say, just spending a moment on this page, that the conversation that we had with police was, I don't want to see the word transparency on our hub page, because it's sort of a trigger word in the police force. And so we were trying to explain to them that Police Transparency Hub doesn't mean that you have to say police transparency, that this is a vocabulary and that we can change the vocabulary. So from our chief of police perspective, there are 3 major categories that he would like to see on his hub site. And very broadly, let's see if I can, crime info, community info, and department info. So while I look at this slide and I see, 5 different tabs, what he wants to see is 3. And we're still negotiating that. I'm not sure that they understand exactly what that's going to look like, but this is what the activities that Esri will be doing for us as we move forward, maybe. So the very first activity would include branding. So that would be taking everything that the police already has, their logo, their colors and their styles, and making our hub site a seamless integration from what you saw as from our Bozeman hub page or our Bozeman city page to the hub page. So there are certain things, we have colors, we have logos, the police have their own logos and their own colors. So that'll be part of the beginning of creating that hub site. It will be configuring the home page, populating the footer, the backgrounds, the images, getting the FAQ data, the social media, and any additional information that the police feel like they want to redirect off of the city page to the hub site. And then part of that agreement includes the transfer of knowledge, which means that we here at the city would be able to own the work that Esri will be doing for us. So let's get into the configuration a little bit. So when you're looking at the community engagement configuration, there were actually 5 application types that we're looking at. I'm going to show you this one, and I will tell you, I'm probably going to wish that I had done this way before. Yep, give me just a second. I'm going to pull this over for a second. Sorry, I can tell you that links are not friendly when you're in a PowerPoint. Okay, so let's go over here. So this is what a community engagement hub site, well, this is a hub site for Bellevue, Washington. And this is what their community engagement page looks like. And as you scroll through it, I think as GIS professionals, you can see this is a header. I love this, find your section captain. And this is based on a map. And then if you click in a map, it's going to bring up who your sector captain is, and it shows his districts, and then it gives the option to contact them. This is an option to report crime online. And I'm going to just go to that link really quickly. So this actually redirects you back to the City of Bellevue's city page, which is not part of the hub site. And you can see that with their branding down here. And then it gives you the option to file a report here. And I think this is why it's so complicated when we're working with the police to explain to them what's happening as you're moving through the website, because there are a lot of redirects and some people just are not comfortable with redirects. That's probably going to take a minute to load, probably not going to load at all. Anyway, let's go back here for a second. And I'm going to pull up my PowerPoint. And then go back here. Sorry. So then there's a workforce diversity component, and I'm going to go through these examples after I get through the PowerPoint, so we don't have to go back and forth. So there's this crime statistics configuration. Again, we're looking at Bellevue, Washington has done it very well. There's 3 of them that are from Bellevue. Evanston, Illinois did a really great public crime map. And then also the option to embed surveys. And then there's a use of force configuration. Atlanta, Georgia has done a really great job with their use of force dashboard. This is a really interesting dashboard. I wonder if I can get it to load there. It's probably going to just crap out. Here we go. Okay, so this is an awesome dashboard. If we can get it to load. So, a moment. So notice that we have maps, use of force, and incident reports. They have details of the incident reports, subject demographics, officer demographics, and then outcomes. So this is a really great example of being able to take the data behind something that could be potentially really contentious, and just giving people the facts and the statistics about what's happening, and maybe just give everybody the option to just look at the data and not responding in maybe such an emotional way. And I think Atlanta has done a really good job, especially with their police reform. And we're there. Okay. So I'm gonna go back here. So another one is crime analysis, and crime analysis is fairly new in the solutions for police, and it's actually you have to download it and use it in ArcGIS Pro. It's really cool, and if we have the chance, we'll maybe explore it a little bit more. And then this is an additional resources tab, and I'm actually I think I already have that loaded. Let me bring it up. Okay. Here we go. So one of the things that I was looking at when I was presenting to police is what's already out there, what's done really, really well. And if you actually have the opportunity to view the video from the 2022 UC, this site is actually referenced and it's in ArcGIS Online. And something that I would tell you about this is if you're interested in seeing this, make sure that you're not logged in to ArcGIS Online. And then you can search for police transparency, and it'll take you to this site. And this site actually has hub sites that are already, they've already been stood up. And you can see the ones that are being actively used because they have a lot of hits on them. I thought this one, so I'm actually from Tucson, so I spent some time in here. So it actually takes you to this page, which is their landing place for their hub. And then it gives you the option to view it. I'm going to go back for just a second, because if you're interested at all in standing up a hub, one of the things that I would highly recommend is that you spend a little bit of time here. Because if we go down a little bit, I'm going to go to the next page. So when we start to see these lower counts, you can see that these people have it fully stood up, their solution, police transparency solutions. And if you go here, there's nothing about the hub site. It's just this generic, whatever was populated when you create the hub site. And you can see all three of these say exactly the same 4 or 5. But then you'll see here where people start branding, right? So I think that if you make a decision to do solutions, you're going to want to come in here and spend a little bit of time. And I actually would like to go, let's go here. So this is the Aurora Police Department, and it gives a brief description about what it's doing. And then you can actually click and go into the Aurora hub site. So this is where really spending some time in thinking about what you want and how you want to say and convey to the public is really important. So notice here they have community policing. And if we go in here, they do a really good job of being able to just convey to the public what's happening in their community. This is a different way of showing who the officer is. They actually give a picture. They give an office address. So it gives you a couple of options to see who's working in that area. And then this hub site actually gives you an option also to report a crime. And this is part of solutions. Let's see. So you can see here that this is powered by ArcGIS Survey 123. What I would say is earlier when we went to look at one of the other surveys, that survey was not actually a Survey 123 survey. It was a redirect to a survey and a company that organization already had in place. So if you're considering doing something like this, you can leverage Survey 123, but if you already have something in place, you can also use that. All right, let's go back here. All right. I'm gonna exit out of that slideshow for a second. And then I would like to just take a moment to show you what we have. It's already up here, police. So this is our police group that we have. And you can see that we have accidents and citation reports, some other information. And if we buried ourselves in here a little bit, we would be able to see all of the people that are members of the group and the content that they're creating on a daily basis. All right. Let's go. Sorry, I just closed my PowerPoint. There's a couple of things I'd like to show you. So this is again the Bellevue hub site, and this is their community engagement page. Also find your sector captain, report crimes online. I liked this because they had the police advisory councils and community and police partnerships. So it gives people the option to volunteer and get involved. This is the one that I really like, is the workforce diversity. So this is using some statistics. It's creating a dashboard. It's giving you an idea of what the workforce looks like with regard to race and ethnicity, but then also years of service. And then it gives you some options to interact with it. And I really like this because it gives you options to look at the male and female diversity within. And then if you go here, it's actually giving you the numbers. All right. I'm going to go to the crime statistics. So this is another dashboard, and this is taking data that they already have and just putting it in a format that people can understand in a dashboard. And then there's other additional dashboards that they have. So if you're interested in learning about traffic citations, you can learn about traffic citations. If you want to look at arrests, you can look at arrests. So I think this is, like I said, this particular site is really well thought out. And I think it's pretty intuitive as you move through the dashboard itself. It gives you an explanation, understanding what does use of force mean? And then it actually gives you the use of force dashboard. And it gives you the option to be able to filter it by years. So, right. Does anybody have any questions?
One question that I have, Gail, is what is the amount of blurring on the data, i.e., so the data doesn't represent your house when it was a PFMA, what level of blurring are they using for the data?
Yeah, that's a really good question. That actually happens really early on in the process of extracting the data from Zerker. So it turns out that there's actually an option in Zerker to be able to, and I think I'm saying that right. We've talked about this a couple of times. It moves the data to the nearest intersection. So it's not pulling the data directly. Like if you're looking at a point, you're not looking at exactly where that happened. And then just to be clear, the data that we're presenting to the public, all of the personal information has been scrubbed from that. So I think if you were like, for instance, a couple of weeks ago, there was a police car parked across the street from our office. And I was like, I wonder what's going on. And I just happened to be looking at our police data. And so I pulled the data up on our public viewer, and I went to our building, and there was a point in the middle of the intersection that was, it was just some generic call where they were coming to, just to make sure everything was okay. So yeah, that's done very early on. But if we went back to, I'm not sharing anymore, but if we were going back to that police incidents There were actually two. There's one that's called Police Incidents and one that's called Police Incidents Public. So the Police Incidents feature class actually gives the data. And this gets complicated too, because I know that there have been conversations about vehicle accidents, and they're not showing up exactly where they should be. So we go back and forth about exactly how accurate the data is, and it has to do with how it gets pulled out of Zerker. But that public one definitely gets scrubbed. Any other questions?
In the research that you've done, what has law enforcement, the actual officers, deputies on the streets, what have they said about the hubs post implementation?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So I actually don't interact with any of the officers or the other staff. So the decisions for what will be put on the hub site will definitely be at the chief police and deputy chief police level. And I can tell you that just from my conversations with them, the find your officer, that application probably isn't going to fly. And that's for really good reasons, because of safety of the officers. And yet I personally think as we start to delve into some of these options that there is a use for that, like for instance, a resource officer for the schools, right? So we have a couple of resource officers, we have a couple of schools. It makes sense that we could have a boundary for them and be able to say, hey, if you're looking for the resource officer for your child's school or a school in your neighborhood, click here and it would give you some information. But there wouldn't be any spatial data that you would be able to locate that person. And also I would say that we just opened the Bozeman Public Safety Center. And I was fortunate enough to be able to take a tour of that safety center. And I will tell you that all of our officers are behind protected doors. So, I mean, that's one level of security that protects them. But I do think that making that information, that geographic information available, especially when it comes to our police force, is not probably the most desirable. And I would also say that specifically, when you're looking at those regions of what police officer responds in what area, the information that I've been given is that our officers apparently are able to bid on the areas that they work in like quarterly. And so it changes all the time, and it has something to do with the union and the way that our workforce is set up for police. And so those change a lot. And just speaking with the person that would be managing that data, it just felt really cumbersome. So specifically to that map, I probably don't see that going on our hub site.
Well, that was a great presentation.
Thank you. Any other questions? Just let me know. It's so quiet.
I guess I have a question, Gal. The dashboards, the one problem I've had with them is printing. Like, do you have any like printable reports as far as out of any of those dashboards?
You know, that's a really good question, Bob. I do know that there's one dashboard, and it's fairly new, that allows you to interact. So essentially there's a map, there's data on the map. The user can go in and select a bounding area, and then it selects all of those points within that area. So they can do some querying on the data, which is pretty easy and straightforward. And then they can actually print from that application. That's the only app that I've seen that there's any printing capabilities on at this point.
Hmm.
And and we haven't actually tested it yet. So we're just right now working with police to figure out what do they really want? What data makes sense to port off of their the city police page into a hub site and displaying it in a different way. So still pretty early.
Yeah, I underwent a similar process more, and Tommy actually beat me to the question I was going to ask on working with the captains of MHP to build some reports type dashboard stuff, and I just couldn't get them to log into an application. They wanted sheets of paper with maps and graphs in front of them, a monthly report type thing, and they just weren't really open, some of them technically, but
yeah, I think that's a really good point. And I would say that our chief of police is very open to the idea of being able to make data available to the public and outside users without having to have any intervention. So for instance, I think that there's a really strong likelihood that we'll be creating some reports that are based on maps to be able to capture that data that's in Zerker and push it to a report, like dog incidents. I know that sounds really weird. We have a lot of dog incidents that occur here in Bozeman. Stolen bicycles, that's another one. For some reason, the data as it comes out of Zerker can get really jumbled. And I think that the way that we're able to access the data from Zerker allows us to maybe put it into a report in a way that Zerker isn't able to, if that makes sense. Like kind of taking the raw CVS, CSV data and then just putting it into fields to make it look good, right? And that's part of what we do really well. And I think as we move forward, we'll be looking at some reports. I do have a comment about the Zerker data. I'm not sure how many people on the call actually use Zerker as their tool. It sounds to me like it's kind of best in class in the country. A lot of people are using it. That interface and those permissions to Zerker are, if you're thinking about doing anything, that's the very first place to start. I was really fortunate that when I came on, it had already been stood up. But when we hired Lynn as our sysadmin and then found that we needed some additional reports to support our traffic engineer, Taylor, we were able to make those changes pretty easily and pretty fluidly because we'd already done it. But I would definitely say that the heavy lift is getting the data from Zerker to that CSV file. Once you have that done, moving the data, and we use FME a lot. So it's an FME routine that moves that data from the Excel spreadsheet or CSV file into our enterprise geodatabase. So that happens, like I said, it happens daily. And then Lynn actually has created a script that archives all of the data after 30 days. So we don't actually get rid of the data, we actually just archive it. But the other comment that I have about that Zerker data is we also use Zerker data to support transportation, right? Because of traffic incidents and bicycle incidents. We actually just very recently have lost a very beloved school teacher who was hit by a car. A truck ran a red light and hit this person. And so we're taking that data, and we're very fortunate to have already created the workflow. But that moving of the data from Zerker to the enterprise geodatabase is key. And then once you do that, then it's limitless, right? Whatever you want to do in terms of querying and displaying and reporting and all of that kind of stuff.
Hey, Gail, this is Eric, real quick. Zucker, could you, maybe I missed it. Is that your dispatch or what's that source? I guess maybe I missed it early on.
No, Zerker is, I wish I could give you a lot of information about what Zerker is, but Zerker is actually where all of our police information is housed. So it's like the database that the police department uses to, like, first of all, report an incident, and then as they collect data on the incident, it gets put into Zerker. Yeah, and then as part of that workflow of being able to put that data in, this is where that 911 information, I wish I understood it, but it pulls when a call is made, a lat long is recorded, and then we can use that lat long to be able to geospatially render the point of the incident. The other point I was going to make about the transportation is we recently have been asked, well, not recently, this has been an ongoing thing, but we're required to provide information to the National Highway Patrol and also to the Montana Transportation Department. And that data actually comes out of Zerker. And because of some limitations at the state level, getting those reports has been really difficult because of the way that the database is configured on the back end. So what happens is we have a table, and then we have a table within a table. And I think if you were to map it out, you would be able to see that it's like a key that goes to other information. And that information is really, really hard to get out. So sometimes the limitations of the data are strictly because of the way that it's coded within Zerker.
Okay, yeah, I just kind of interested. We've worked with the call for service records, on a number of occasions. I mean, we've done a lot of jury trials for city attorneys, city crime, and our county folks and stuff like that. So I'm familiar with the call for services file, that CFS, and working with that. I was just, because I was looking at your guys' dashboard and I was just thinking, this is something, what you guys have up there, that was something that we had toyed with for years, a long time ago. And we just never got any folks excited about it over at our dispatch and police department, which, looking at this now makes me go, well, I'm going to send this back to them and say, are you guys interested in this? Honestly, we tried it, I don't know, 4, 5, 6 years ago. And there was just, it was like, oh, well, that's nice. And I'm like, dude, but, so I guess this will be an impetus for me to try again, or for us to try again and just see. But yeah, that I see how your stuff is mapped to an intersection versus, because the actual CFS is a pretty accurate location for, where they end up doing a call. So there must be a routine in that, what you're calling Zerk, that application that resets it. So, because I end up, there's a lot of times when I've taken it, I end up aggregating it by census block or some other geographic type thing. Because interesting.
Yeah, that's a really good point. You know what? I've heard both stories. I wish I could say that I was the person that was here during the configuration part, but I have actually heard that it happens on the Zerker end, but then I've also heard that it happens on the GIS end. And I wish I could tell you.
I think I have an idea of, so like when you look at the I think they changed their name to Central Square, but when you look at their GIS requirements, the only thing that's required in that is the actual streets layer. And in the back end stuff they do in the database is actually just looking at those intersections. So it is on the Zerker end, and it's
Thank
looking
you.
at the intersections of those roads. They build like a huge SQL database. SmartCop does the same thing.
Yeah, it is Central Square. Thank you, Bob. And you know what, I've gotten differing stories, so it's nice to have you clear that up for me. And I will tell you that that actually causes a problem for Taylor in traffic engineering when he's trying to pull the traffic incidents and doing some modeling for intersections and that kind of thing. He has to, that's where that having that data sort of embedded and having to really drill into the reports comes, because it can be kind of hard to tease that out. And I think it especially, we were working with Gallatin County right before Warren left. He had reached out to me and said, hey, our sheriffs want to have the same kind of dashboard that you have. How do we make that work? And we were talking to him, and actually, Michael, you might have been in the room when we were talking about that. I saw Michael here earlier. And we were talking about how in a rural environment, that can be problematic because it could be miles between one intersection. Yeah, Tommy, you're shaking your head because you already know what that looks like, right? That could be somewhat problematic, but within the city limits of the city of Bozeman, I mean, I would argue that there are cases where it doesn't do a good enough job of hiding some of that personal information, location information.
That's actually one of the major considerations for in the rural areas is you have a lot of small roads because you have to name your driveway if you have more than 3 houses on it. So that's why I was curious on the blurring, because you might not have a house for 4 miles. So if a PFMA shows up 3 miles from the point, well, there's only one point, so it kind of clearly identifies. That's where I'd looked at trying to blur the data in accordance to basically 30-mile segments or 60-mile segments. So, you know, cover one polygon for all the data.
Yeah, and I think everybody would have to use the data differently, but I'm super excited to help the police move forward with their ideas and their vision for what their website and their hub site's going to look like. It's so difficult when you try to explain what a hub is. Like that concept, kind of like when we used to say the cloud, it used to be people just couldn't understand what it meant. And I think that for the hub and solutions, what does that mean to them? And so right now, even though we've presented all of this information and we know that they're on board, they're looking at, okay, well, is this really what we want? And I would encourage you, I actually put the link to the police transparency, those hub sites. If you're interested in doing any kind of transparency for police or setting up a hub site for police, there are some really awesome examples. And I would tell you, especially with the police diversity page, and this is really interesting because Lynn just came back from the ERISA conference and she was talking about how there's the integrity that we need to have in GIS as GIS professionals, and making sure that when we're sharing this information that we're being honorable and honest. I think that there are ways that in some of these dashboards, I've seen that they're maybe softening the edges. I don't want to say that they're lying. I would say that they just have maybe withheld information or presented it in a way that doesn't give the full picture. And then there are other hub sites that are like, they are spot on. They have taken the diversity within their department. They've been super honest about it, and they've gone the extra step and gotten the demographics from the region, from their area, and included that demographic information along with the demographic information of their force. I think that's from my perspective, what the story I would want to convey. But if you have potentially a workforce that isn't as diverse as the area that you live within, then maybe not including that information is just a way to say, well, we're giving you the information, but we're maybe not giving the whole story. So, I mean, I think there's ways that you can spin it. There was another hub site, and I think it was Atlanta, who did a really awesome job of presenting use of force. That's a really very, very sensitive topic. It can really cause just, you know, some really heated discussions and some heartache. I mean, you just have to be very sensitive when you're presenting that information. And I think that there are some hub sites that have been like, you know what, yep, here's the information, and just let people come to their own conclusions based on the data and given all the data. And I have a deep respect for that, you know, being able to just take the data and say, you know what, this is the data that it is, and we're going to try to do better. Anybody else have any other questions?
Old stuff, Gail.
Thank you. Yeah. Reach out if you have any questions. I'm happy to share any information that I found.
Thank you so much, Gail. And if no one else has any questions for Gail on that wonderful presentation, let's go ahead and do water cooler conversation for about 10 minutes. If anybody has any pressing things that they want to share with the group, or questions or issues that have come up recently, yeah, let's chat. Not a very chatty group today. So one of the things that I've been working on is trying to automate more and more workflows. We just hired a GIS programmer in Madison County here, and I'm hoping to basically turn pretty much everything we can into a streamlined process, so that way there's a whole lot less manual activities. Has anybody done cool or awesome projects with automation that you're proud of?
Okay,
And
everybody's being really quiet.
Anybody use Python?
I just am going to throw out that we use FME all the time, every day, all the time. But we also use some Python scripts. So I'm gonna stop talking and let other people talk. But yes, automate as much as we can.
Does anybody know what the price tag is on FME?
That's a question for Jan.
Yeah, I heard a couple of years ago, I thought I heard it was $50,000, but I don't know. I've never seen an actual.
It was that expensive. I can go back. I'll send you some information about what we paid for our FME.
It's not that important. I can't even get the commissioners to buy new computers. So FME's not even a pipe dream for us, but thank you.
Well, and Tommy, I will mention that Esri has a FME Lite, right? We've got a relationship with Safe Software where we have our data interoperability, which is a slimmed down version of their full FMA suite. And we have it both in the desktop extension for Pro. And I think you can also get a server extension too. So it's affordable. And then all of you who have small government EAs, you get a discount on it.
Cool.
And I also I'm going to put in the chat window, shameless plug for holistic testing coming up November 8th with quick capture. So there will be a survey in the chat if anybody's interested in joining that.
Thank you so much, Jen.
You know, with automation side of things, if you're talking about that, I know Jason does a great deal with where we put it together in Model Builder, and then from Model Builder, you can always export that out to a Python script, you know, into Python, and then you could put that into a batch program, you know, type of thing. And so I know we have a couple things that are automated that run nightly for updating the Trackit, which is the permit application for both the city and county. You know, that's a central square thing. So we have a couple scripts that run like at 2 and 3 in the morning for that type of thing. And then Jason has it that he runs to create exports from his address data set that he hands off to the burn permit folks. So that's something that we email him, something that we do every quarter. He has something that runs that we then send that data set to the active 911 folks so that they could update some of their data. Yeah, a couple little things that he has that are kind of automated on that side of things. So
Nice.
that's something, you know, we put it together in Model Builder, and then from Model Builder you can just have it export out to Python, because neither one of us are programmers by any stretch of the means. So
Yeah, along those notes, like anytime you run an analysis tool, you can export that command as a Python execution, and run it right there in Pro as Python if you saved it or whatever. If you had like any analysis tool that took a while to set up with field mapping or different locations, and just sort of run that over and over again with those same settings, of really like low level automation of tasks. But
yeah, I ended up doing that when we got imagery. It was in the wrong projection, and rather than send it back to them and wait for months for them to get it back to me, I just set up a script that was an iterative script that ran through a folder of imagery sets and just reprojected it all for me. So
And in the chat window, I have the same problem. And Ann O'Toole was saying that her police and sheriff don't have the web page, but it is far down the line. So going back to Gail's presentation, so the Eric, you were saying building in Model Builder and then exporting. Have you, or has anyone built a model, turned it into a single script, and then built another model inclusive of the script that was built from the initial model? Does that make sense? Basically compound stacking models. Does that work?
yeah, I've not done, I don't know, Jason's nodding his head no. We've not done that here. It'd be interesting. I mean, it probably wouldn't be, it probably not in it, it's probably not a, probably it could be done, I'm sure, but I don't know off the top of my head. You can score some French quarters there.
Yeah, Andrew looked like he had something to say.
I think one of the ways I found.
Can barely hear you, Andrew.
Oh, how about that?
There you go.
Okay. What I found in terms of being able to link Python and Model Builder stuff together is if you have like a custom piece of functionality that Model Builder doesn't have out of the box, like a certain calculation workflow or something, then what I've done is I'll create a tool that, or a Python script that can do that particular thing, and then you bring that back as a script tool. So you basically make a parameter tool in a toolbox, and then you point it to that Python, and then you bring that script tool into the Model Builder like any other tool, and then it acts pretty seamlessly in your workflow.
Nice.
And so that's one way, and it would take me a little bit to find an example, but I have done that before. And so, you know, and that's kind of sometimes where the workflow starts, where like you start out with a Model Builder just to throw something together, and then you're like, I want to use the same tool in a different context, but I really don't want to have to copy and paste and then modify a Model Builder to do that same thing. So then you just turn it into a tool that you can just plug in the parameters regardless of where it came from. And then you bring that back into whatever model you do, and then you only have to fix it once in the Python script as opposed to in 3 or 4 or 5 or 100 different models, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So I can connect with you more about that later if you want.
That would be great. So it's hitting 3 o'clock, and at 3:30, there's the MSL GIS data validation and aggregation portal for NG 911 training. And
Wait,
you
can you
guys,
say that again real fast?
I can, MSL GIS data validation and aggregation portal for NG 911 training.
No, that's good.
Gotta remember I dispatch on Sundays. I could say a whole lot of stuff really fast. So, but that's at 3:30 Microsoft Teams. You should have gotten an email on it. If you haven't, send an email to Bob Cochran or Michael Fashaway. And if you don't have their emails, then shout out real quick and Bob will, I'm sure, pass on his email info to you.
Thank you, Tommy.
Gail, real quick, what tools are you talking about that are you hitting Living Atlas? Because some of that stuff that comes down to credit usage as well, doesn't it?
Yeah, and I might be calling that the wrong thing. It's the data that they use that comes from the census. I should have asked Jan the name of it. So all of
Yeah,
those.
Living Atlas, but I'm just wondering if there's some of the premium content that if they're hitting premium content. Because if that's the case, or if you're running analysis against that census data, I know there might be credit usage involved, but not knowing what they're doing with it, I probably shouldn't comment.
Yeah, I haven't seen that anything that I presented today was going to have any additional charges.
Okay.
So it'll be an integration of our data and then using that data and I'm calling it Living Atlas. And if Eric were on the call, he would correct me. It's probably called something else, but it's essentially the data that they get from the census.
Yeah.
And being able to use that, like for that, when you're looking at the demographic data, that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, some of that stuff is, that census layer, be it from Living Atlas or other things like that. Those, like Andrew just said, the enrichment tools require credit usage, but just the general specific census stuff is good. But if you're doing stuff on top of it, like enriching a data set with demographic numbers, that comes into a credit usage. But just pulling it and running analysis for other purposes, yeah, that's no problem. I mean, I use that, we use that all the time. So
I think it's Mark Hendrickson here with Missoula, City of Missoula. So I think, like, if you're talking about enriching data, you can use ArcGIS Online and just learn a little bit of Arcade, and you can enrich the data enrich polygons, like quote unquote enrich them for free if you just learn a little bit of Arcade and just do some spatial queries under polygons. I do that for neighborhoods when they have a quick question about being like, oh, what is the percent renter for one of our neighborhoods? We can just do a spatial selection from all blocks that intersect with that neighborhood, and then we can come up with renter data behind it fairly easily. So learn Arcade, even though it's a frustrating language to learn it. Can save some hassle.
True.
I will say that I've been a little bit disappointed that Arcade isn't supported in the new experience builder that I've seen yet anyways, but they say it's coming. If you started looking at making any dashboards through the experience builder.
Yeah, and we were asked to start using experience builder so as like a wrapper for all of our other applications, so that we can like essentially keep the same URL, keep it on the city's webpage, and then adjust anything on the back end, like adjust any applications and not have to post a new URL, or just in case somebody has a has it in their bookmark, we can put it in Experience Builder. So I have explored it just a tiny little bit. But I kind of thought you could put an application into Experience Builder, but I could be wrong. Like
you can, Mark.
Yeah. So I think you can use Arcade and just put that application that you built on the side, or that dashboard that you built opposite, or not using Experience Builder, and put it into Experience Builder and just use that like URL or that Experience Builder as the wrapper for it. Experience Builder is kind of hard though. I've been having trouble with it.
It seems like it needs to go through a few more iterations before it's quite as powerful as like Web App Builder. Keep hoping it would kind of get there, but isn't there yet.
Mhm.
So.
As far as Esri says, though, the Experience Builder will have the continued development for new tools and widgets and whatnot. Where Web App Builder, they're done. That what we see now is what we'll get until they probably won't phase it out for quite some time. But it's they're certainly not improving it.
I haven't seen like maybe more than like 3 or 4 widgets within Experience Builder right now.
No, they have most of them. They've got the edit and the print, and it's pretty well developed. I'm definitely to a point that I prefer it to App Builder at this point for sure. And it definitely was uncomfortable to get there. But it performs better, and it lists data better a little bit, and linking to the maps and the ability to create data views within it. There's a ton of advantages to it. It really is. With the exception of the map in there will not support the arcade clicks, which is very frustrating. But
The nice thing is you can make some pretty mobile friendly applications in the Experience Builder environment, which was kind of hard to do with Web App Builder, as you all know.
So has anyone found a way to, or does Esri have a way to basically push every project that was built in Web App Builder over into Experience Builder? Because I built all my maps 3 years ago in Web App Builder, and now it's going away. I don't have time to rebuild them.
I don't think Web App Builder is going away at all, and that's what Esri just told us in some of our recent meetings. It's going to be around. So Tommy, I wouldn't worry about that. And as to that question, maybe just, I don't think so. I don't think they have anything they'll do that.
Okay, cool. I was scared.
Yeah, Tommy, it's Jan. You know, Esri has a long time history of supporting our technology, even when the underlying technology is being deprecated. So we'll continue to support you, but it sounds like an Experience Builder presentation would be timely for the group. So if you're interested in having an Esri subject matter expert speak on that, I'd be happy to source that for you.
That would be great, and I'll kind of get some feedback from the group and Experience Builder, and then the other one was field maps. Is one of the conversations that's come up a couple of times, and I might visit with you, Jan, about doing like a separate meeting, whereas we've already got things kind of lined out. So maybe do like our third Thursday local government group, and then maybe have a Wednesday meeting or something like that.
Yeah, Tommy, we'd be happy to do that.
Okay. Beautiful. Thank you, Jan. Well, guys, shall we all refill our coffees and get ready for the MSL GIS data validation and aggregation portal for NG 911 training?
Thank you, guys.
Have fun at that.
Have fun with your training.
See ya.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye all.
Bye.
Take care.